What I have in my hand is the Vancouver Plan, hot off the press. It's a document that lays out what the city will look like over the next 30 years and beyond. And how it all came together is really the result of thousands of people providing their input on what we should prioritize as a city. Yes, for the past 3 years, the city has been engaging with residents, businesses, Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations, and many organizations. It received more than 25,000 survey responses, met with more than 250 organizations, hosted over 500 events and meetings, 52,000 engagement touchpoints, 318,000 postcards, 110 youth activities, and okay, you get the idea. And the result of all that? The Vancouver Plan. 166 pages of ideas spread across 11 policy areas to address some of the key issues facing our city in the next 30 years. Everything from childcare and housing to ecology and food systems. These policy areas are rooted in the plan's foundational principles, which are reconciliation, equity, and resilience. And now I'd like to take you through the plan page by page, starting with the title page. As you can see, it's got a nice big 2050 on the front. We flip next to the table of contents. Very important. Okay, maybe not the best idea, but skip ahead to page 39 and you can see that the plan really boils down to 3 big ideas. The first big idea, equitable housing and complete neighborhoods. Housing that's affordable to anyone, anywhere in our city, and connected to everything you need in life. The second idea, an economy that works for all, where people can find a wide range of employment or entrepreneurship opportunities throughout our city, and making sure that our economy doesn't come at the cost of exploiting people or the environment. And finally, we have climate protection and restored ecosystems. We want our city to play an active role in reducing greenhouse gas emissions while preparing for the impacts of a changing climate. We also generally just want a city that integrates and supports its natural ecosystems rather than disrupting them. Was this really necessary? Okay, so that sounds great and all, but how can we actually make this happen? How does a city accomplish its goals? Well, I want to get into one of the most powerful tools in a city's toolbox, a land use strategy. Think of an amusement park. You have the rides, you have food stands, and you have carnival games. Well, someone thought about where each of those things should go to best accomplish the amusement park's goals. Except their 3 big ideas were for people to have a good time, have very nutritious food, and spend lots and lots of money. Contribute to the local economy. The city of Vancouver kind of does the same thing. It thinks about where things should go in the city in order to achieve certain objectives. And that is how we can start tackling these 3 big ideas. Let's start with equitable housing and complete neighborhoods. When you look at a map of the housing we have in Vancouver, you can see that parts of the city already have lots of dense and relatively affordable housing, while many areas mostly have expensive single detached houses. We can also see that many neighborhoods don't have amenities like shops and services within walking distance, where it's really difficult to access basic needs without a car. So the land use strategy? Protect and renew existing housing in areas that already have it, and create new housing in areas that don't. We'll generally add more housing along major transit streets and allow for missing middle housing like multiplexes, townhomes, and low-rise apartments throughout the city. We'll also establish more commercial hubs and high streets so that everyone can access basic needs like groceries within a 15-minute walk from their home. Let's move on to an economy that works for all. If you look at a map, you'll notice that most of Vancouver's businesses are concentrated in specific parts of the city, and that's no accident. The city's zoning bylaw doesn't allow for most commercial activities in all these areas highlighted in yellow. Only housing is allowed here. At the same time, we're running out of spaces for large and loud industrial businesses like factories and warehouses that can't just be dropped into any neighborhood. These businesses provide well-paying jobs beyond office work, so it's important to keep them around. So, the land use strategy? Well, on top of the commercial hubs I mentioned earlier, the city also wants to spread out economic opportunities by allowing small businesses all across Vancouver. So if you live in a neighborhood like this, you could have a business running out of your house right there, or if you need to get your hair cut, you can get it done at a salon across the street. And if you're feeling hungry, well, you can just grab a bite to eat at the cafe on the street corner. On top of that, the Vancouver Plan also states that the city will protect and expand industrial employment areas, which would mark the first time in recent history where the city is actually expanding industrial space, not reducing it. And finally, we have the last big idea, climate protection, and restored ecosystems. Now, there are many ways to address this issue in our city, but it's helpful to start with this map. It shows the areas where we should expect flooding if sea levels rise by 1 meter. In fact, there are already areas in Vancouver today that flood and get damaged during a storm or receive a barge that nobody can move. With climate change, these issues are only expected to get worse. When it comes to land use, the Vancouver Plan proposes a network of ecological corridors where we exercise extra caution for environmental impacts while nurturing wildlife. In these areas, we'll plant more trees, add green space, and potentially collect stormwater from our streets into waterways that mimic old streams. We'll also expand the city's network of greenways for cycling, walking, and other active transportation so that more people feel comfortable leaving their car behind to get around the city. But we have to admit, this is also an area where land use strategies have some limitations. When it comes to our city's climate and ecological goals, we'll need to use other approaches as well. Then we move on to policy 3.1.2, advance area planning to enable and encourage low carbon footprints for residents through denser housing forms. So what happens next? Well, the Vancouver Plan is the overarching plan for the city, so a lot of the work now is to create plans for specific parts of Vancouver. This is where we get into the details of how the intentions of the Vancouver Plan can meet the unique needs and concerns of different areas. In fact, some of that work is already underway. The city recently passed a plan for the Broadway corridor earlier this year, and they've just started to work on a plan for the areas around the Rupert and Renfrew SkyTrain stations. The work is definitely not over yet. There'll be lots to do and much more public engagement to come. So if there's anything I can leave you with for this video, it's to take part in all this. We all have ideas for how we can improve our city, but it really takes people showing up, answering surveys, attending workshops, giving engagement touch points, and ultimately just having a discussion on what kind of city we want to live in to put those ideas on the map.